Check at the start of each trip and when you park. When transporting hazardous loads, you must stop and check the tires. The only acceptable way to check the tire pressure is to use check tires every 2 hours or 100 miles. Make sure your tires are properly inflated. Check B placarded vehicles with dual tires at the start of each trip and when you park. You must stop and check the tires every 2 hours or 100 miles, whichever is less. The only acceptable way to check the tire pressure is to use a tire pressure gauge. Do not drive with a tire that is leaking or flat except to the nearest safe place to fix it. Remove any overheated tire. Place it at a safe distance from your vehicle. Don't drive until you correct the cause of the overheating. Remember to follow the rules about parking and attending placarded vehicles. They apply even when checking, repairing, or replacing tires. Do not drive with a tire that is leaking or flat except you find an overheated tire during an en route inspection. If you are hauling hazardous materials, you must check tires every 2 hours or 100 miles. Make sure your tires are properly inflated. Check B placarded vehicles with dual tires at the start of each trip and when you park. You must stop and check the tires every 2 hours or 100 miles, whichever is less. The only acceptable way to check the tire pressure is to use a tire pressure gauge. Do not drive with a tire that is leaking or flat except to the nearest safe place to fix it. Remove any overheated tire. Place it at a safe distance from your vehicle. Don't drive until you correct the cause of the overheating. Remember to follow the rules about parking and attending placarded vehicles. They apply even when checking, repairing, or replacing tires. Clearly distinguish hazardous material shipping papers from others by or keeping them on top of the stack of papers. The shipping papers for hazardous materials should be found where to keep shipping papers and emergency response information. Do not accept a hazardous materials shipment without a properly prepared shipping paper. A shipping paper for the hazardous materials must always be easily recognized. Other people must be able to find it quickly after an accident. Clearly distinguish hazardous materials shipping papers from others by tabbing them or keeping them on top of the stack of papers. When you are behind the wheel, keep shipping papers within your reach with your seatbelt on or in a pouch on the driver's door. They must be easily seen by someone entering the cab. When not behind the wheel, leave shipping papers in the driver's door pouch or on the driver's seat. Emergency response information must be kept in the same location as the shipping paper. A driver transporting in cargo tanks must have an approved gas mask in the vehicle. A driver transporting in a cargo tank must have an emergency kit for controlling leaks and dome cover plate fittings on the cargo tank. Equipment for chlorine. A driver transporting chlorine in a cargo tank must have an approved gas mask in the vehicle. The driver must also have an emergency kit for controlling leaks and dome cover plate fittings on the cargo tank. If your vehicle is placarded, carries any amount of chlorine, or has cargo tanks, loaded or unloaded, you must stop 2 feet before the nearest railroad crossing. Stop before railroad crossings. Stop before a railroad crossing if your vehicle is placarded, carries any amount of chlorine, has cargo tanks, whether loaded or empty, used for hazardous materials. You must stop 15 to 50 feet before the nearest rail. Proceed only when you're sure no train is coming. Don't shift gears while crossing the tracks. As a professional driver, your job at the scene of an accident is to. If you are in an accident involving hazardous materials, you should. Accidents and incidents. As a professional driver, your job at the scene of an accident is to keep people away from the scene. Limit the spread of material only if you can safely do so. Communicate the danger of the hazardous materials to emergency response personnel, and provide emergency responders with the shipping papers and emergency response information. Follow this checklist. Check to see that your driving partner is okay. Keep shipping papers with you. Keep people far away and upwind. Warn others of the danger. Send for help, and follow your employer's instructions. Toxic gases can, even if they don't smell. Toxic gases. If you discover a cargo leak, identify the hazardous materials leaking by using shipping papers, labels, or package location. Do not touch any leaking material. Many people injure themselves by touching hazardous materials. Do not try to identify the material or find the source of a leak by smell. Toxic gases can destroy your sense of smell and can injure or kill you even if you don't smell it. Never eat, drink, or smoke around a leak or spill. If hazardous materials are spilling from your vehicle, spills. If hazardous materials are spilling from your vehicle, do not move it any more than safety requires. You may move off the road and away from places where people gather if doing so serves safety. Only move your vehicle if you can do so without danger to yourself or others. How many transportation hazard classes are there? Responses to specific hazards. So let's review our classes. Class 1 explosives, Class 2 compressed gases, Class 3 flammable liquids, Class 4 flammable solids, Class 5 oxidizing materials, Class 6 poisonous materials and infectious substances, Class 7 radioactive materials, and Class 8 corrosive materials. What should be done before attempting to separate collided vehicles or hazardous materials? Class 1 explosives. If your vehicle has a breakdown or accident while carrying explosives, warn others of the danger. Keep bystanders away. Do not allow smoking or open fire near the vehicle. If there is a fire, warn everyone of the danger of explosion. Remove all explosives before separating vehicles involved in a collision. Place the explosives at least 200 feet from the vehicle and occupied buildings. Stay a safe distance away. You or your employer must phone the National Response Center when any of the following occurs as a direct result of a hazard. Required notification. The National Response Center helps coordinate emergency responses to chemical hazards. It is a resource to the local police and firefighters. It maintains a 24-hour toll-free line. You or your employer must phone when any of the following occurs as a result of hazardous materials incident. A person is killed. An injured person requires hospitalization. Estimated property damage exceeds $50,000. The general public is evacuated for 1 or more hours. One or more major transportation arteries or facilities are closed or shut down for 1 hour or more. Fire, breakage, spillage, or suspected radioactive contamination occurs. Fire, breakage, Spillage or suspected contamination occurs involving shipment of etiological agents, bacteria, or toxins. A situation exists of such a nature, i.e., continuing danger to life exists at the scene of an incident, that in the judgment of the carrier should be reported. Persons telephoning the National Response Center should be ready to give National Response Center. Persons telephoning the National Response Center should be ready to give their name and address of the carrier they work for, phone number where they can be reached, date, time, and location of incident, the extent of injuries, if any, classification, name, and quantity of hazardous materials involved if such information is available, and the type of incident and nature of hazardous materials involvement and whether a continuing danger to life exists at the scene. If a hazardous material is spilled, carriers must file detailed reports to the National Response Center within National Response Center. If a reportable quantity of hazardous substance was involved, the caller should give the name of the shipper and the quantity of the hazardous substances discharged. Be prepared to give your employer the required information as well. Carriers must make detailed written reports within 30 days of an incident. Bulk packaging means a packaging is a single container with a maximum capacity. Bulk packaging means a packaging other than a vessel or a barge, including a transport vehicle or freight container, in which hazardous materials are loaded with no intermediate form of containment and which has a maximum capacity greater than 450 liters, which is 119 gallons, as a receptacle for a liquid. A maximum net mass greater than 400 kilograms, 882 pounds, or a maximum capacity greater than 450 liters, 119 gallons, as a receptacle for a solid. A water capacity greater than 454 kilograms, or 1,000 pounds, as a receptacle for a gas. You have completed the learning phase. You will now begin the testing phase. This quiz will test your knowledge on the HazMat endorsement information. If you score an 85% or above, you are ready to go to the DPS office and take your test for this section. Good luck.